Hey everybody, this is Devin. They call me DOM Manipulation Devin around these parts. Thanks for tuning in to my DOM manipulation series. I'm going to give you the very basics of DOM manipulation in 3 parts. If you are just coming into this video, this is the 3rd part, so you should probably go back and watch the first 2 parts, which are going to be a little bit more basic than this one. They'll sort of ramp you up into this one. I will pop up links to those videos in whichever corner that happens, and I'll also put links to them below in the description so you can find them there. In this video, we're going to be working with forms and doing some light form validation just to show you how that works. Let's go over to the computer. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to this form on my page where people can sign up for the Big Goal course. I want to tinker a little bit with these form fields and just show you how those work. They have a few extra properties and methods I can use to really be able to do what I want to with these in JavaScript. First, I'm going to inspect one so I can figure out the best way to select it. And this is not going to be easy because the DOM is such a mess. Let's see if I can size it to a point where I can actually see what I'm working with. No, it doesn't look like I can. Okay. You probably won't have this problem. For one, you won't have the font size blown up in DevTools such that things get pushed way out, and 2, your DOM won't be as messy as mine. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to work based on some assumptions. I don't think there are, well, yeah, there are some other forms on the page. I don't think there are any forms on the page before this one. So I think if I select the first form, I'll get something that is a parent of these elements. I'm going to create a variable called firstForm, and we'll test that out. All right, looks like I was correct on that. Now I have the first form. I can go into that and start tinkering with the controls. I'm also going to assume that this is the first input in that form. So I could select it that way if I wanted. I could say first input equals document dot query selector. Oh, actually, I don't need to select for the whole document. I can select from the first form. Document is actually an element. It's kind of the top level element. So that query selector method that I'm calling on document, that's on every element. Let's call it on first form. That's going to limit our selection inside that element. Let's see what that is. First input. Got it. That is the first input. That's one way I can select it. I don't really like that, especially since each of these inputs has a name, and that's unique. So I could really just use that to select instead, and I think that's going to be a better way to select each of these. I'm going to create a new variable. We're going to call this one name input. This is going to point to the same element. This is just an alternate way to select it, and I think this is probably a better one. Now I'm going to use an attribute selector. Name equals name. Let's make sure we got the correct element there. Looks like we're good. I'm going to use the same method for selecting the email input. That previous method I used, the query selector for the input selector, that's going to start getting a little bit harder as we want to select the email input. So that's why I think this attribute selection is going to be much more reliable. We'll use firstForm.query selector name equals email. I assume that's what it is. I actually don't know, but hopefully that's correct. Email input, and it looks like that is in fact the email input element. Well, one of the cool things I can do with these elements is I can look at the value attribute. Right now, the value attribute of the name input is nothing. That's because there's nothing entered in it. This name that you see here is just a placeholder, so that's not actually a value in the field. If I type my name, Devin, and then look at the name input value, I'll see it there. And the same goes for the email. Email input.value. A lot of people use this method if you have some validation you need to do on your form. You can grab the element that you need to validate the value of, and then you can look at its value and compare it in whatever way, run it through your algorithm for validation, and then you can do whatever you need to do if it's valid or invalid. If it's valid, maybe you want to enable a button so that they can submit the form, or if it's invalid, maybe you want to display some sort of help text around the field to let them know what's wrong or what they need to check. It's pretty handy for that. You can also set this attribute. So I could set the email input to an empty string, which effectively deletes my input. And if you want to reset a form like that, you could set the value of each field to nothing, or you could run this reset method on the form itself, which will reset all the fields. Just for the purposes of a demo here, I'm going to do some fake validation, and I'm going to do it interactively here in the console. This is not practical for a number of reasons. One, you wouldn't do your validation in the console. I'm just doing it this way so you can see it live and understand how it works. You can apply these same principles inside your code, and you would do it all programmatically. You wouldn't be sitting here interactively validating someone else's submission, because there's not really a way to do that. Second, because you probably don't want to validate a name field beyond, I want to make sure this is not empty, which you can do with your native HTML5 controls by using the required attribute. You wouldn't want to sit here and do what I'm about to do, which is say, oh, the name has to have a capital first letter, because I don't know that that's true. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not true that every name has to have a capital first letter. For the purposes of demonstration, let's look at some fantasy validation here. I'm going to clear the console so we get a fresh start. That doesn't take away any of our variables, so I still have name input and email input. I'm going to focus on name input right now. I'm going to be the user of the website now, and I'm going to go enter my name. Now I'm back in programmer mode, and I'm going to say, okay, the user has entered something. Maybe they've submitted the form. I want to see, is this a valid name by my standards, which is it has a capital first letter. I'm going to start by creating a variable that will contain the first letter of the user's input. We'll call it name first letter. To do this, I'm going to start from the name input. I'm going to get the value, and then I want the value at index 0. That will give me the first letter of the name. Let's see, make sure that has what we think it should. That has a capital D. Now I need to think about, how could I determine if this is capitalized? I'm sure there are several ways to go about this. You could probably look at the ASCII character code and make sure it's within a certain range. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to say if the name first letter to uppercase, which converts a string to uppercase, if that's equal to the name first letter, then this is capitalized. And we're just going to assign this whole condition to a variable. We'll call it name is capitalized. Now let's see what that value is and make sure it makes sense. It should be true right now. Looks like it is. So that's my fake validation. What I would do is I would check this value to see if it's true. If that's true, then I would do the thing I want to do if that's a valid value. So if they've hit submit and I'm checking this before I send it off to the server, at this point, when I get back this true result on name is capitalized, I'm going to go ahead and send that off to the server. Let's look at a scenario where this is not true, just to verify everything works. Now I can't just use name as capitalized because it's based on the old values. And I've also painted myself into a corner here because I've used constants, so I can't reassign these. I'm going to use let this time, and we'll just call it first letter equals name input dot value at index 0. And we're just going to call this one is capitalized. And again, that condition is first letter dot to uppercase equals first letter. Is capitalized in this case is going to be false. So it looks like our algorithm works. We could write code that does this and check it, and we would be able to know if that first letter is capitalized or not. Again, probably not a validation you want to use in the real world, because I'm pretty sure people can have names with first letters that are not capitalized. You could similarly validate an email address using this method. You don't really need to because HTML has built-in email validation on the HTML5 input type email element. You'd prefer to depend on your browser to do that, but maybe in your instance, maybe in your use case, you need an email that's from a specific domain or it's not valid, or a series of domains. That's something that you could look for in JavaScript and validate there, because there may not be as easy a way to do that with just the HTML5 input validation. Those are some really simple ways you can interact with forms in JavaScript and do a little bit of validation on your form input. Thanks for watching this series. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. You're not going to be a DOM manipulation expert by any means, but at least now you know some of the basics. I would love it if you would post a comment and let me know what you would like to learn next. I focus a little bit on technical topics like this one, but I also do a lot of videos about how to move forward in your career and how to overcome the hurdles of searching for a job, and how to do freelancing as a web developer, all those sorts of things, so that you can actually earn money doing this and not just learn it and work on your fun pet projects at home. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.